Hello guys, my beautiful and handsome viewers all over the world. Welcome to my page, Timo Starboy Reality Talk TV. Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And for those people who are already sleeping, good night. So this our show is gonna start now. So new update, new update. Before I play you this video, I just like to say one or two things. In as much as we don't respect our rule of law, we don't respect our rule of law in that land, the country can never move forward. Because some people, they are breaking laws and they are untouchable, and this is so weird. This is so weird and ridiculous. You cannot say you are in one country and they have a rule of law and you want to be a criminal. You want to be a hard criminal. And because of your influencer, your money, your power, whatsoever, it's not gonna be happen. It's gonna be happen. This is not going to be happen. You must respect the rule of law in that country. And this our judiciary system must be changed. All these our so-called judges that they are scared of whether death or kidnapping or whatever. I don't know what they are scaring of. This is not part of the system. You cannot be scared when you are a judge, when you are a lawyer. You have to obey the law. You have to make the rule of the law to happen. You have to let the law take its own course. That is what we need in that land. A land that has no rule is a sin. It's a crime scene. Crime scene. So we don't want that in Nigeria. Some people, they are breaking law because they are powerful or they have money. That is not going to happen. It doesn't happen anywhere. And it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen in this country because this country, they are abiding by their law. Even in America, in the UK, in everywhere, in Australia, in a powerful country, in a civilizing world. You cannot just let them loose because they are a politician or whatever, or because they are billionaires. We are all equal in the face of God, under the God laws. So we must obey our rules. So anyway, I greet you, my viewers, my loved ones, my fans, all over the world. I greet you. Happy holiday. We are doing a Golden Week holiday here. So we are at our own holiday. So I don't know, maybe Easter. They call it Easter in Nigeria. I don't know other places. So happy weekend, happy holidays to you guys. So I hope you enjoy our program. So let's start with this our first video. I will play you two videos. So don't forget to share, like, and love. Share our program so that they will not bring it down. All these people, they are targeting who they will fly their program down. So we don't. In order to avoid that, so please like and share. Like and share. That is all we need from you. We don't need your money. We don't need anything from you except share our program and leave your comment. Leave your comment below. So, okay, let's go. This is Channel TV. So, it's about Tinubu, acquire $11 million property in UK. $11 million property in UK. What is the guy is doing? What is his business? What is his business? What is he doing? So we need to know. So yeah, and this is a son of electing president. Whether selecting or electing, just choose one. Me, I don't care whether they select or elect. Just for them to obey the law. That is my own concern. So let's play the video.
Conversation on the program this evening. Running for public office means that You will be subjected to public scrutiny, as the name implies.
Means your background, your finances, even your family ties. Nothing is really off the table when it comes to running for public office. And Nigerians today woke up to a story published by Bloomberg detailing how. Let's get into the first leg of a conversation on the program this evening. Running for public office means that you will be subjected to public scrutiny. As the name implies, it means your background, your finances, even your family ties. Nothing is really off the table when it comes to running for public office. And Nigerians today woke up to a story published by Bloomberg detailing how Aranda Overseas Corp, which is a company belonging to Tinubu, the son of the president-elect Bola Tinubu, is said to have purchased a London mansion which the Nigerian government had tried to seize as property bought with the proceeds of crime. Well, according to the report, he bought the property for $10.8 million, it's about £9 million, through the company in which he has majority shares in 2017. And the details of the company is publicly available on the UK government's website. And the property is said to have previously belonged to Mr. Kolawole Aluko, whom the federal government, under the President Muhammadu Buhari administration, has accused of billions of naira worth of fraud and of buying the mansion with embezzled funds. So this story has gotten a lot of Nigerians, even people outside of Nigeria, talking about the case, especially because it is coming less than a month to the inauguration of the president-elect. Our Channels Television has reached out to Mr. Tinubu and the spokespersons of the president-elect, as well as the EFCC, but we're yet to get a response. But let's get some learned opinion on this, just to sort of give you an insight into what we're dealing with here. We're joined on the program by a legal practitioner, Mr. Dapo Otitoju, who joins us virtually from the nation's capital, Abuja. Well, good evening and thank you for joining us on the program. Well, we'll try to make do with the picture quality, but just to get to the heart of the matter. Like a lot of Nigerians, you've seen this report, and I wonder for you, what are the issues at stake here?
Can you hear me? Good evening.
Yes, I can. Good evening. Please go ahead.
Yes, this allegation is still not confirmed, still an allegation, and I will want us to also look at the fact that Tinubu is an individual, a company in which Groupon, it's a company that we know that also into business of various whatever business you think they are entitled to also work on. But be that as it may, I believe that every individual have a right to acquire properties as the demands may come to them. Now, looking at the issue at stake, just because Tinubu is the son of the president-elect does not mean that he does not have a right to acquire property. He is not the president-elect, and neither has he also assumed position in Nigeria. So now think of the fact that in the oil sector, Tinubu is somebody who has made money from various businesses, and so he has rights as an individual to acquire property. So are we saying that if a president, if the father is a president, he himself does not have a right to acquire property from his own business, from his own resources? By all standards, Tinubu is not a poor man. And as such, if he has a property that he owns.
Sorry guys, we have a disturbance. I don't know why this is coming up. Sorry, we'll continue in a short while.
We looks like we lost connection with you there for a moment, Mr. Titoji. But if you're still there, looking at the details of a company, Aranda Overseas Corporation, which, as I said, is publicly available on the Companies House website of the UK government. It says the country of incorporation, the British Virgin Islands, puts the address, essentially puts details of the company, which is in reference here by the Bloomberg report. And I wonder for you as well, a lot of people are raising the moral question as to, $11 million, $10.8 million, we can round it off to that. A lot of people are asking the moral question that
is a huge money.
That is a huge sum of money.
Yeah, it's a huge indeed. It's very huge indeed.
Like I said, if you look at the status of Tinubu in the society, apart from being the son of the president-elect, Tinubu is not a poor man. Tinubu, by all standards, has worked and has earned his money. Looking at how much you are talking about, it is not for JD, it is for the company.
For the company.
About Blue Bank being the purchaser of the...
Which company? Which company does he hold? Don't stop telling lies.
But whatever it is, we as an individual,
all these stupid lawyers,
to have right to purchase property as long as the constitution of Nigeria...
They can never talk straight. They can never talk the reality.
To immovable.
All these imbeciles lawyers.
He can acquire property.
He can acquire property.
That was acquired abroad. And what the problem is...
Ẹrójú olè mú ọmọ yín ò ṣàgbàfọ̀ ó ń káṣọ wálé. Ẹrójú olè ò mú.
One of them is the CEO of the company.
Enough is enough.
So you have to be able to separate Tinubu from Bola Tinubu. Bola Tinubu is a president. Bola Tinubu has not even assumed office, let alone now maybe making the rounds that
the thief is not a washer, it's not a cloth washer, but he's taking clothes home.
About the fact that the money is huge, 11 billion.
You are telling me a story.
Pounds. As long as Tinubu is an individual, he has worked, he's still working, and he can acquire property as much as he can. So long as there's no linkage of the Nigerian resources for him. He has not held any public office.
What is he doing?
He's not the governor.
That is the question.
The deputy governor. He's not holding any elective or public office. He's a businessman. So I believe that we should stop this making round and concentrate on better things.
Well, it's interesting you say that that's not a huge sum of money for a lot of people. That is huge, and I imagine for majority.
It's a huge.
Another issue at stake here. So Bloomberg
very huge indeed.
That report. The company in question is Aranda Overseas Corporation. But another major issue is the fact that the Nigerian government under President Muhammadu Buhari had actually tried to seize that property, saying it was bought with proceeds of crime, and it's the same property in question that is said to have been purchased by Aranda Corporation. And I'd like to speak to this question of due diligence, because the report out there is also saying that, well, that property was under mortgage anyway, so it was maybe reclaimed by the bank and eventually bought. So does that speak to maybe the due diligence that was done by the anti-graft agency which sought to seize this property in the first place?
Now, you see, when you talk about mortgage, the mortgage system is totally different from what you are talking about. Now, in mortgage outside Nigeria, mortgage system is totally different from outright purchase, which we normally do here in Nigeria. Now, looking at what you just said, a property that was seized from Aluko and the former Minister for Petroleum. Now, this property will be seized, or will be seized by the federal government of Nigeria. Of course, have a right to either, auction it, or if they found out that there's mortgage running on the property, they release it, or whoever the mortgagor is, or the mortgagee. Tinubu could also have a right to also acquire this property upon being released back to the bank. Now, the whole activity around this property is still not clear as to whether it was actually seized by Federal.
It's clear. They will seize it.
And if it is mortgage, then you cannot be talking of corruption because mortgage system has to go with this. I mean, monthly remittance or yearly remittance, as the case may be.
Where does he got the money
So, in essence,
from in the first place?
What I'm trying to say is that
where did he got the money from? That is the question. That is the big question right there.
Have a right to invest in properties. As
Big,
you know,
big
Nigerians and
money,
all other countries all
huge
over the world
money.
today, properties are more lucrative in business. And people invest in it not to live, but of course to keep and buy and make money.
Right.
I can also, you cannot say that the $11 million or pounds, as the case may be, is a proceed that, that is coming from one person.
Once AC, you are covering up, baby.
So what I'm trying to let you know is
you are covering up, my dear lawyer.
It has its own if.
You are covering up for.
All right, let's wind down on this again.
For the son of selecting president.
The company in question that purchased the property from that report is Aranda. But what kind of impact do you see this having on, well, the image of the president-elect, the swearing-in, which is expected in less than a month away with this kind of report? What kind of impact do you see it having on his image and, of course, the swearing-in? And his administration as a whole, I should add.
Yes. I can hear you. Please, can you just...
Oh, my question is pretty straightforward. I'm asking that what kind of impact do you see this report that was just released, what kind of impact do you see it having on the image of the president-elect, the swearing-in, which is coming, and, of course, his administration?
Yeah, well, as far as I'm concerned, I don't believe that this should affect any swearing or should have any image to affect anything. Sorry, because Tinubu is an individual. He's the son of the president-elect. He's an adult. He's not a minor. And so whatever he does, is different from the president-elect. Bola Tinubu is different from Tinubu. So please, what I'm trying to let you know is that we cannot link this alongside any of the activity of Bola Tinubu. His son is different from himself. And so, whatever his son does, to the best of my knowledge, that is why he's answering Tinubu. And the president-elect, Bola Tinubu, is also answering that.
In cases like this, in other climes, there's the Hunter Biden case, for example, is a major reference point. But in terms of how Nigerians receive this, the anti-graft stance of this current administration and, in fact, international perception, because Bloomberg said that he actually bought that property cash down. So does that bother you in any way with that quantum of cash?
Now, Bloomberg is a company. Like I said, it's a company. And it is not only Tinubu that is a major stakeholder in that company. Tinubu could also have facilitators, contributors within the company to have bought that property. That's why I say it could be a pool, a system whereby you pool resources together to acquire a property for purposes. So for now, it's still not verifiable. I could not have said, Tinubu has not told you
that was a bluntly liars.
So I feel that
bluntly
we should
liars
more on the fact that it's verifiable. Not.
All right. Well, these issues are actually there, and Nigerians will naturally ask the question because that's
we
what
treat this matter very seriously.
Accountable to
we not let it go
in different ways, and I'm sure a lot of Nigerians will be waiting to at least hear the other side. And we'll keep asking those questions, hoping to, of course, hear from them soon enough. But we'd like to thank you so much for shedding some light on this. We've been speaking with Mr. Dapo Titoju, who's a legal practitioner. Thank you. At least we try to make do with the conversation in spite of the...
Okay, guys, let me play you another video. Another second video we have here. And now we close the... This is the second video of the day. This one will chocolize you guys. We are talking about our law. Our judiciary system is crumble. So hear from them.
So, as a new administration prepares to take over, a look across the landscape of law in Nigeria, a landscape that is found wanting with fundamental lessons to learn.
The law is so rough, so bad,
weak legal institutions that cannot
so shambolic.
its performance. No one can deny that the rule of law in Nigeria has to a certain extent not succeeded in one of its primary functions, which is to
impunity laws,
the state and its agents.
Impunity.
Have been rampant corruption.
It's on Nigeria laws.
Contraction. But as Nigeria once again prepares to set out on the road to reform, if the promises of the politicians are to be believed, this, by implication, has to be the period when the rule of law can do the greatest good.
Yeah.
As this country is trying to
the rule of law in Nigeria, as you can see,
political and economic trajectory.
So impunity.
Legal analysts put it, it's time for soap gowns to stop groping knee-deep in technicalities, bills, cross-bills, rejoinders, injunctions, affidavits, etc. Mountains of costly nonsense piled before the courts, which so exhausts hope that you have to wonder whether there is an honourable man or woman left amongst its practitioners. So how can the legal landscape be made to be an integral part of the institutional setting in which we live our lives? How is the system to be reformed if there is so much that is rotten within the legal system itself? Well, let's find out what my first guest makes of all that. Professor Fidelis Odita has been described as one of the most accomplished legal minds in Britain, Nigeria and Africa today. He's King's Counsel in the UK and Senior Advocate of Nigeria and holds 3 postgraduate degrees from Oxford. He is also President of the Nigerian branch of the International Law Association and runs a successful legal practice in both Nigeria and the UK. And Professor Odita joins me now in the studio. Absolutely honoured to have you here.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in. And you have said in the past that the fundamental question that Nigeria's leaders must face is lawlessness if they want this country to develop.
Yeah.
And by that, I presume you mean that Nigeria does not lack laws, but the rule of law.
Correct, yes. I mean, often the rule of law is bandied about, and it can mean different things to different people. But let me try and sketch out 3 possible meanings. The first is that everyone is subject to the law, which is the layman's understanding, all and sundry subject to laws, and that when there are infractions of the law, those infractions are detected, investigated, and enforced by prosecutors who are free from political influence, and before courts and tribunals, which are strong, independent, impartial, and honest. So that's one. You can also see rule of law as meaning that public power is constrained by laws, and the public officers and political leaders are accountable, and that no one is free to act with impunity. So if you want to analyze as a lawyer what those things mean, you could say the rule of law is both a norm of institutional morality, institution, and also an overarching principle of constitutional law. So as a norm of institutional morality, the rule of law is concerned with the public, with the moral dimension of it's concerned with the moral dimension of public authority. And that's the principle of constitutional law. Of course, it has several applications. The central theme is liberty. But other than liberty, you want a system which is effective and which guarantees equality of access and enforces the law uniformly against everyone. So when we say Nigeria is lawless, it's not because of want of laws. On the contrary, I think that Nigeria is over-legislated. They over-legislate everything. There's legislation. We've had constitution amended 5 or 6 times within a short space of time. We've had the Electoral Act amended any number of times. So it's not because of want or inadequacy of the legal framework. It's because of the impunity which characterizes the actions of the actors, both the political leadership, the public officers, and the citizens themselves.
Yes, so you do agree then that this issue of lawlessness and the rule of law may be the biggest challenge facing the new leaders who will be installed on May the 29th?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And would you say, like some have, that indeed Nigeria's political stability and its key economic success may depend on its ability to develop the rule of law in a country such as this, where many argue that it barely exists?
But you can see the problems of the absence of rule of law with our democracy, or such democracy as we have. So democratic ideal involves 2 principles. The first is that the people entrust political power to the executive, the legislature, in accordance with free, fair, peaceful, and credible elections. And that there must be effective and fair means of resolving any disputes arising, and that requires the existence of courts which are strong, independent, impartial, and honest. So you cannot have democracy in either of those principles or ideals without a rule of law. So if you take the first one, if your institutions are weak, you've got police people who were there, people who were cutting away with ballot boxes, you've got INEC officials who were actively, instead of being independent, impartial umpires, were taking sides, and you've got courts which misinterpret the laws, you've got a recipe for confusion. So the rule of law underpins successful societies, not just political societies, it also underpins successful political economies, because every economy is underpinned by commerce, and commerce is underpinned by the fabric of law. And the rule of law itself talks about sanctity of contracts, sanctity of property rights. But when you act with impunity, you disregard property rights, you revoke, you ignore injunctions, and you do as you like. What you are creating is an entirely lawless society where everyone acts with impunity. So no one's behavior is constrained by any law.
That's a very interesting development, and I particularly find that aspect of it that has to do with economic development very, very interesting. I want to come back to that in a minute, but you have the unique privilege of being both a senior advocate of Nigeria and a King's Counsel. I keep wanting to say Queen's Counsel, but it is King's Counsel now, isn't it? In the UK. I wonder if you might make a contrast between the British legal landscape and Nigeria's legal situation as a way of looking at the discrepancies and the inconsistencies of the Nigerian legal system.
Well, the first thing is in the UK, there is rule of law. There is an independent, impartial, and honest judiciary. And the UK legal system contributes about 5% of its GDP, which is huge. You're talking about 200 or 300 billion contributed by lawyers, and over 70% of the cases which come into the commercial court in England have nothing whatsoever to do with England. The 2 parties or 3 parties or 10 parties are foreigners. The reason they come is because they believe in the integrity of the British system. And it's there for everyone to see, no matter how high you are, if you infringe the law, it will be investigated, and if sufficient evidence is found, you'll be prosecuted. In Nigeria, in contrast, if you're big enough, no one would investigate you. A policeman couldn't stop you. And the reason he couldn't stop you is not because he knows that, because he didn't know that he has power. It's because of impunity, which means that if he stops you, there might be reprisals. So he does his work, and he's punished for doing it.
Yeah, he's punished for doing the right thing.
For doing the right thing. So the system encourages impunity, encourages lawlessness, punishes those who try to adhere to the rule of law, and therefore turns everything upside down. So the contrast couldn't be more stark. With a system which is ordered and based on laws which everyone complies with. And because there's such massive voluntary compliance, it's easy to detect, investigate, and enforce against those who infringe. But here, it's a free-for-all. In some respects, you might even say Nigeria is a crime scene. Which one do you want to investigate?
Well, I have to ask you then, in that context, I mean, how have you coped with, because I mean, you kind of straddle the two countries, and you do a lot of work here, and a lot of what you do here has to do with commercial law. Indeed. So I'm wondering how you have to deal with, because I mean, you talked about, you know, the law of contract as being essential in any big country that wants to really develop and attract investment and all the rest of it.
Yes, but the enforcement of the laws, and I think this is important, the courts, with all due respect to them, have really not performed as well as I would have expected them to. Of course, I know that the courts are constrained in various ways: inadequate funding, poor infrastructure, inadequate training, the facilities are poor, the courtrooms are all cramped. But I'm afraid I don't agree that all those constraints have contributed to the mess that we now see in the courts. And you actually need a vibrant court system to be able to enforce contract and property rights. And one of the things that you have to do in a system of effective adjudication, any effective civil justice system, cases must be dealt with fairly and effectively so as to bring about practical justice. But when there is excessive delay, and some of the delay, in fact, you might say maybe 50 or 60% of the delay is caused by the courts themselves. So, for example, I'm supposed to be in courts this week. Someone has removed my case, but I've come from London to do it. And I come into Abuja, and they say my case, which is supposed to come up on Thursday, may not come up. And the case is impending for over a year, and I've wasted time and money, and I have prepared, and I've taken the risk of flying. And they say the judge or one or more of the judges has not returned from Salah break. So that is gross indiscipline at a senior level. But you can imagine the mindset of such a judge. I can't come back today, I'll come back tomorrow, but that impacts all the cases. So all these cases are adjourned. Some of them will be adjourned for 12 months, for 6 months, for 8 months. And when you combine that with the impact of the election, how the politicians have hijacked everything and given their own districts priority, because once we have elections, everything stops. The election districts are time bound. Therefore, if you're in court, if you're in custody unjustly, you'll be serving time which you shouldn't be. So you're imprisoned, incarcerated for no reason, because politicians want to have their district resolved. If you've got rights to enforce, you can't enforce them just because of the politicians. But the courts themselves and the lack of correct work ethic means that the system has crumbled.
Lack
so
of
it isn't
capability.
just the absence of infrastructure, which has to be acknowledged. It's a problem. There's no transcription and so on. But what have they done? It seems to me that we cannot wait for Angel Gabriel, biblical Angel Gabriel, to come and sort out the mess. The senior judges have got to take responsibility for what is a complete mess. And I think that there's a lot that can be done very cheaply. Of course, we know that the cases are too many, but part of the fact that we have overloading of cases is because of ineffective case management by the judges.
Yeah.
And inability to enforce
irregularities.
To impose costs, because the court is a scarce resource. People can't
So many irregularities.
But the courts encourage
activities.
Very late applications for adjournment, very late preliminary objections. So you could file your papers today. Someone waits for 1 year, a day on the eve of the hearing, we files some response, and the court says, well, you know, we have to look at it.
So ridiculous.
No penalty whatsoever. So it's impunity.
Yeah.
If your behavior is not constrained by law,
impunity.
You have no incentive to act.
That's the word right there.
Well, why should you?
Absolutely. It's fascinating listening to you talk, and I was going to ask you, for the benefit of our audience who may not be legal eagles,
yes.
Perhaps you could explain exactly what is meant by the rule of law, but I think you've done that to some extent. But I'm wondering if you could use more examples, and you have, for instance, from the recent Nigerian election, or from whatever you might choose. In other words, what are the criteria, the correct criteria by which you might assess Nigeria's legal system? And you've already done that to some extent, but it's just that, I mean, it's brilliant listening to you do that analysis, so perhaps you could do a bit more.
Well, I mean, that's why I said, if you take a rule of law as a norm, you're concerned with the moral dimension of public power. But if you look at it as a principle of constitutional law, it has several applications. But let's look at the election. So to my mind, qualitatively, there is absolutely no difference between mandates obtained by force and mandates obtained by fraud. But maybe before I develop that, I need to remind our listeners about what I call the democratic ideal, that it involves two principles. The first is that the people entrust political power to the executive and the legislature. Entrust. And that entrusting gives legitimacy to political leadership, and itself underlines civil liberty and freedom of the people. It also ensures accountability, because it provides you with a reliable way to change the stewardship if you're unhappy. But where that process is interfered with, because institutions are weak, then what you have is an illegitimate, illegal political leadership, which is no different from military leaders. Because to my mind, there is absolutely no difference in quality between mandates obtained by force, such as a coup d'etat, or mandates obtained fraudulently through fraudulent elections. And that is very painful, because in both cases, there is no legitimacy, there is no mandate, there is no consent. The consent of the people is vitiated, in one case by force, in the other case by fraud. But vitiated it is. And that is a direct consequence of the absence of rule of law. So when you look at what happened in Adamawa, for example, if Professor Mahmoud should go and declare results at 4 a.m. without having to take proper legal advice, actually he didn't. They say he didn't. And he declares the results at 4 a.m. I know the returning officer declared, not him. Then the chap in Adamawa,
that was arrangement.
Knowing what the Constitution provides for, that it is the returning officer that announces results. He calls the press conference and announces the result. You cannot get more impunity than that.
Absolutely.
But that is a function or a manifestation of the weakness of institutions. So all our institutions, we've given an example of policemen standing idle when people are cutting away ballot boxes. We've even seen examples of policemen stealing the ballot boxes themselves, misunderstanding their role in society. We've seen the military people doing the same. We've seen the courts totally inept, weak, very partial, and corrupt.
And of course, it is that adjudicative procedure that must be fair. If you've got, like, all the things you've enumerated, and it gets to that point, I mean, that's the last hope, as they say, of the common person. So, that applies to judicial decision-making, behind which lies the integrity of judges.
It is the courts that must enforce the rule of law.
Yeah.
That's why I said it involves two principles. The first is that you have the masses, the people, entrust political power through elections. The second is that you must have a fair and effective means of addressing disputes, whether they are political disputes, civil rights disputes, contractual rights, property rights. They must be fair and effective.
And obviously you don't see integrity, fairness and justice as underpinning the practice of law in Nigeria.
Well, I think that that's too broad a canvas. I think that's really too broad. In fairness, there are judges who are honest, impartial, independent, strong, and ethically sound, observing what you'd observe in England. They do their best. Unfortunately, they are few and far between.
Yeah, and that's what's worrying.
That is what's
But
wrong.
we've got a few minutes left. Let's try to proceed from the ethical roots of law,
Yes.
which you have so eloquently established, to economic consequences, which at first glance may seem rather like a leap. But it's actually not, because one of the universally acknowledged truths is that the rule of law, particularly insofar as it restrains the grabbing hand of the rapacious politician, is good for economic growth.
Yes, that's what I said at the beginning, that every economy is underpinned by commerce, and commerce is underpinned by the fabric of law, and the law has to be enforced, there has to be certainty, there has to be enforcement by the four independent, impartial, strong courts. And the difference between many countries which are developed and many which are underdeveloped is the rule of law.
Yeah.
But why would I come and invest in a
Absolutely.
place where my rights cannot be enforced? There is no guarantee. You might sign a contract today, someone tells you, well, yes, that's a piece of paper. It doesn't matter because they can disregard it, and then they tell you, as we have all been hearing recently, go to court, knowing that there is no fair or effective way of seeking
That was a shame.
redress.
So in that regard,
That was a shame. It's really totally shame.
of a country such as Nigeria
Ridiculous.
to develop these effective ways of implementing the rule of law is, you could argue, the most important source of both historical stagnation and contemporary underdevelopment.
Correct. Because what
Such a
do you
joke.
find in Nigeria? If you look at historically, we've had a problem of rule of law. But even more recently, it's become worse. If you took a 20-year review, say from 1970 to 1990, you might even say the system was weak, but there were pockets of brilliance. But now when you look at it, and you say to yourself, you're looking for anything that can be described as fair. And that's why completely public confidence in the judiciary is eroded. And they tell the courts, they tell everyone, go to court.
Go to
I'm
court.
sure the judges understand go to court means that go there, you won't get anything, because if the courts were effective, they won't be recommending people to go to court. And I feel ashamed for the judges, and I don't know what they feel for themselves. Because if I were in their position and someone is saying go to me, knowing that the outcome is predictable, they know that they can't get any redress, I'll feel really bad, and I feel really small, and I won't even accept to be addressed as my lord or my lady. But unfortunately, they seem not to get this point, which is staring them in the face.
It's a dirty
We've got
deal.
less than a couple of minutes, which is rather a shame, having just experienced your great analysis there. But what would your advice be to a government that's coming in on the 29th of May about how fundamental and how important the rule of law is, and for the process of reform to begin, and perhaps where they should begin that reform?
The first is that the government must lead by example.
Yes.
The government must obey the law.
Accepted.
And so when you go to government offices, they must be exemplary. You can't enforce what
by
you
example.
don't observe yourself. That's one. They must. And it's a big challenge. There's no way you can move Nigeria forward unless you reform the public service. And the key reform
Live by
is the rule of
example.
law. You must instill. And then you then go to the court and ask the court, why have you surrendered your powers to the political leadership? Because Sean gives you all these powers, but you seem to have surrendered them to the political leadership. Look at the Lawan decision. Look at Akpabio decision. Look at Hope Uzodinma. Look, one of the reasons that people come to lawyers, whether here in England or America, is that you're able to advise your clients based on principles which are clear and outcomes which are predictable. But the way that some of the Nigerian judges have completely muddled the law, created so many pockets of precedents which are incoherent, and you don't know where incompetence stops and where other considerations begin.
Because they are not competent.
So we must start.
No competent judge, no competent lawyer.
The rule of law,
all telling lies,
right,
bunch of lies.
Not hiding people's files, even being cautious. Because when you look at Nigeria's public officers and political leadership, they are like, they're lords. The Lord is over everyone, and they want to be revered and respected, whereas they're supposed to be public servants. So there's a complete misunderstanding of the relationship between the political leadership and the people. And it's because elections are not credible, there is no system of accountability.
Prof, I want to thank you very much indeed. It's just superb.
Okay, guys, I hope you guys got it. You got us to a point, you know. So anyway, this is how we have it for you today. So let me leave you. Enjoy your weekend. We are doing Golden Week here. So it is Easter in Nigeria. So enjoy your holiday. Have a nice day. Bye. Mwah. Mwah. Don't forget to share and like. Share and like. That is important. Thank you. And drop your comment below. Thank you.